Hey guys, I'm Brent Hall, and today I'm going to go over a few tips and tricks on how to help you get the most out of your Photoshop performance. So we're going to start by going into Edit and Preferences and General. You can also get to this by hitting Control K. So the first thing we want to look at is we're going to go to Performance, and there's a few things we can do in here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and slide up my memory usage so I can tell Photoshop to use all of my available memory. Now it says 100% here, but that's not exactly true, because if you'll notice here it says I have 29 gig when actually I have 32 gig. So with Adobe, generally it's not going to let its products use 100% of your memory. It's always going to leave at least 3 gigs allocated so that other programs can run and you can do whatever else you need to do. But it's going to use 100% of what it can take, which is 29 gigs. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click the Use Graphics Processor. So if you have a newer NVIDIA or ATI Radeon graphics card of any kind that has either OpenGL or CUDA for NVIDIA, then you can probably take advantage of this. It's not going to help too much with everyday tasks in Photoshop, but it will give you a description down here that it's got to be highlighted. So it'll give you a description down there that'll tell you what exactly it'll help out with, but it's not going to hurt either. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that on. The next thing is you want to make sure that your this is one thing that most people overlook, and if you're going to be doing a lot of edits, then you may need to keep it higher, like 50, but I'm going to drop my history state down to 20. That means that I'm telling it only to save the last 20 things that I've done to my image. That way, if you need to hit Control Z or Control Alt Z to go back, it'll remember what you did, but only up to the number that you set. So the higher the number, obviously the farther you can go back in your edit, but the more that puts on your cache, and ultimately the slower it's going to end up potentially running. So I'm going to drop that down to about 20. Again, like I said, if I need to do some hardcore editing and I know I'm going to be working on an image for hours and hours and have hundreds of things, I might go up it a little bit, but for the most part 20 is pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is go down here to Scratch Disks, and this is a pretty important one. It'll list all of your available hard drives that you have hooked up at the time. So the thing with Scratch Disks is this is where Photoshop is going to store all of its thumbnails and all that kind of stuff, the cache. You want to typically try to make sure that your Scratch Disk is not set to the same hard drive that you're running it on, that you're running your OS on, or that you're running Photoshop on. And also you want to make sure that your Scratch Disk is typically not set to the same hard drive where you're going to be having all of your large files. So I have a drive set up here, and it's the K drive, and it doesn't have anything else but media on it. So I have K drive set up to be my cache for pretty much, and my Scratch Disks for pretty much all of my Adobe programs, and there's really not much else going on there, and that kind of helps run things a lot better. So once we have this all set up the way we want it, we're going to go ahead and click OK, and that'll save everything we just did in the Preferences box. So the next thing I want to talk about is not necessarily a setting, but more something just to keep in mind while you're editing, and that's resolution. So in order to show you what I'm talking about, we're going to go in here and I'm going to open up an image that I created that is quite large. So this image is, to get to the image size so you can see how big it is when you're working in Photoshop, we're going to go to image size, and you can see here this is 9,000 by 3,500 pixels. That's massive because this was a panorama that I stitched together of a few shots. This is showing that it's 91 meg. the larger your image size and higher your resolution, the harder it's going to be on Photoshop and on your computer to run things and to show the previews and to apply the effects, and it's going to use up more disk space and more cache and all that stuff. So what we want to do is drop this down to a more manageable file size, especially if you know you're going to be basically just working for web production or something. You know, if I'm going to be printing this on, you know, 10-foot wall or something, then obviously I'll keep the image size and I'll adjust the resolution and all that and optimize it for printing. But at the moment, I'm not really going to be doing any of that, so I'm just going to be working with web optimization. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this to just something a little more manageable, and even dropping it to, like, say 5,000 by 19, and I just kept it the width aspect ratio locked on what it is. That brought it down from 91 meg to 28 meg. So that's going to be a lot more manageable, and you're going to see it looks like it shrank, but it really didn't. So now that's a lot more manageable. So just keep that in mind when you're working with larger images. Even if you're working with just, you know, like a single shot, like anything one of these here, you can see that this is 5,000 by 3,500. Even then, if I were to open this up and just go ahead and open it, what I would do, again, for web purposes pretty much, is I'm going to go in here to image size, and I'm just going to do 1920. You know, that's big enough to cover a 1920 by 1080 monitor, and there it is. Now I can start working with this image. So that's pretty much it for the quick tips on optimizing your Photoshop performance. There are a lot of other things, little things that you can do in the settings and how you use Photoshop to help further optimize things, but from my experience, these are kind of the big ones that are going to make the most immediate impact on helping your computer out to run a little better and helping Photoshop to run a little smoother. So I hope you found those tips useful, and if you like this video and you want to see more photo video tips and tricks and tutorials, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and be sure to check out my photo video tutorial playlist so you can stay up to date on all my other tutorials. Thanks, guys.